Hey guys, so now that you have already seen how the HTML and the CSS will work for this particular game, let's try to make sure that when we load the game, the options at least come dynamically or are random enough so that we can use them. So before we get started, we need to make sure that everything of what you present out here can be a variable or probably a data type. Now the way you can handle this data type is multiple ways. Now you can either have this as a separate variable and this as a separate variables, or you can have this as an array and this as separate variables. But what I prefer is like to create an object, because then I can reuse an object. So let's say what I like to do is I like to create objects and then reuse the objects. So let's say I create an object called variable riddle. It is very straightforward and I don't give anything yet. But as you can see what I have on the screen, I have one field, I have second field, and I have options. So what I can do is I can have a field 1 and I can give a value of 5. I can have field 2, have value of 5. I can then have options. So the way I can have is option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. Or what I can do is I can have it as an array. So what I prefer is I call this as results array. And then I can give in an array called as 8, 9, 10 and 11. Okay. Now I have the results array. I also need to make sure that I have the right answer stored somehow somewhere. And that's where I created an object, because anything else I need to store in relationship to this particular object or this particular game, I can put it in the riddle. So what I will do is, let's say answer, in this scenario it will be 10. So I store the answer as 10. I save it and I refresh the page. It will give me an error because I do not have a comma here. Okay, let's refresh it and everything works. Now that we have the riddle, let's make sure we have something called as a function, which means we can write a function called as a play game, and this function will be calling the game. Now I do not have to initialize the riddle out here. What I can do is I can use the initialization of the riddle in this. So let's just do an instantiation, and now you can do a riddle equals to in this play game method, so that you have separated your logic from the actual scripting altogether. And now we can do one thing is we can call this riddle or probably play game on the onload of your body. So whenever your onload body onloads, which is onload, you can call the play game. Now let's go down and let's make sure we add a small console.log. Console.log. Let's add it at the end so that we already have the riddle object by now. And let's print out the riddle object. Let's save it. Let's refresh it. Let's see the console. And you can see there's an object that got printed. Now I'll teach you a very quick way, which is called as console.log. You can do a console.table. And here you can pass in the object or the variable, let's say riddle. Now once you do that, when you see the object, you can see how it appears in a very good tabular format. You can see it has a results array which has 8, 9, 10, 11 and it's of length 4. So you can see whatever is your object in the console. Now we saw what was seen in the console. Let's try to make sure that whenever you load the page, a new object gets called. So let me load the page, new object gets called, which is 4. Again load the page, something is already there, right? So we got that to work. Now let's try to make sure that we randomize things. And if you recollect from our random lecture, which means math.random class, how we created a random number was creating a function with a min and a max. So we'll try to use the same logic out here. Let's create a function random number and let's give it two options, min, comma max, and take a pause, recollect what we did and probably try and write it yourself out here. But I will also go ahead and do it. So let's say return math.floor math.random minus multiplied by max minus min plus 1. I think that's how it was. Let's make sure we have that, and then let's do a plus min. I think that's how it should be. But if you recollect and you did it correctly just the way I did it, probably I need to clap for you because you did a very good job, because you recollected what was there in the math.random. Now that being said, let's try to put it to use and see what we can get. So let's say I have a variable field1 equals to random number, and then pass in a min and a max. Let's say I pass it 20 to 50 for my numbers. Let's do the same thing for field 2, and let's try to print them out. So field 1 comma field 2. Let's save it. Let's run the page. Let's see the console, and you can see two random numbers. So every time you refresh, you should see two new set of random numbers: 23, 50, 20, 43, 36, 21, 40. So we did first job, which is getting the questions randomly. Now all you need to do is store it in the field riddle. So the way you can do it is, let's move these two fields up so that you don't have to hard code the 5s, and you can just say this is field 1, this is field 2. So now that you got the field 1 and the field 2, we are one step closer to getting our riddle object finalized. Now once you do that, we also need to have a results array, which we'll cover in the next lecture. Now let's try to make sure that we update the 5 and the 5 with the fields. The way we can do it is, you can make use of document dot get element, but we do not have anything given in as an ID, and that makes me pause my question, and I will go here and probably try to give an option here. So let's say I'll say ID equals to field 1, because that's what we are using. Even below, let's say we have ID equals to field 2. Okay, now let me go down, and here get element by ID. I can get the field 1 first, and this I can make either riddle dot field 1, or I can even use field 1 as an option. So whatever works for you. And I just need to make sure get document by ID dot inner HTML so that the contents are updated. Let's copy this and make sure we do it for the field 2 as well. So field 2, save it. Let's refresh it, and you can see random numbers seen out here. Fantastic, right? And easy too. So in this lecture, what we did was we created a random number function. We created a play game function which gets called on load of the body. Again, that's an event that gets fired when the body gets loaded, or probably the body is completely rendering. Now once you do that, you just generate two random numbers between 20 and 50, and then you update the elements in our HTML using JavaScript. Easy enough, right? So I hope you have reached the same state. I'll see you in the next class.